So before we actually get into the agenda, I thought we should have a short moment of silence for George Floyd. It's not a local issue, but it is a local issue. It's an everywhere issue. So that's fine. We'll just take a short pause for reflection of prayer with the silence. All right, thank you. Everybody sure, I guess, except Commissioner Roy. And we'll take a motion to accept the reading of the past minutes.
I make a motion that we accept and approve the waiver of the reading of minutes from May 20th and the emergency meeting also on May 20th.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept the waiver of both reading of both minutes. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I would like to request that we table the regular meeting, May 20 minutes, so I can listen to the wording. I can't get on the video. I tried to do it on my own, but I can't get the video for my request for the minutes to reflect something.
I'll second that. Do we know what the status is of the? Well, I don't think it's a discussion. Do we know the status of the video?
I give the link. Oops, sorry.
It's up.
Oh, it is up. Okay.
It is up, but it jumps. It jumps to, I think, starts around the main kind of Commissioners Association discussion or something like that on the agenda. The whole beginning of that meeting is missing
Oh yeah,
the
we
video.
recording.
Right.
That's
So,
why.
There is an audio recording that is on the handheld that Sandy could post.
Yeah, because the recording, we had an issue and it wasn't recording.
Okay.
And I stopped Noel because it wasn't recording when he was speaking.
Any objection to tabling this till next meeting?
No.
Table that till next meeting. We still have on the floor motion for the emergency meeting. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Review and approval of bills, part-time deputy payroll.
I move to approve warrants 2038, 2039 payroll and corrections warrants 1974J and 1975J.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Proceeding under reports, any report from the, and I'll call for you.
Chair, there's nothing to report about MCCA.
Thank you. Central Maine Western Workforce.
The focus of the Western Maine Workforce, Central Western Maine Workforce Board of Lake has been new board appointments and continued focus on serving the people of Western Maine in need of job training or placement throughout the progression of the COVID-19 crisis. I would also like to point out 6 of the 21 members of the workforce board that are from Androscoggin County. They include Bonnie Staffing, Auburn Savings Bank, St. Mary's, adult community education through MSAD 2, IBEW 23, and the Androscoggin Valley Council of Governments.
Oh,
Just a fun fact.
very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Reports from Sheriff, Jail, Communication Reports. Mr. Sheriff.
As you're all aware of what's been going on in the communities, our law enforcement division is pretty much assisting Lewis and Auburn so they can assist with and support the people's rights to protest. So as they're doing that and bringing in extra staffing to coordinate traffic and things of that nature, or maybe antagonists driving by. We're handling some of their calls in Lewiston or Auburn. We've had instances due to how things have escalated in other communities where we've sent deputies to Portland. It's keeping us pretty busy. When we first got word of the rally, seeing as though how some of the protests have outsiders come in or antagonists in the group or harassing the group, and seeing the destruction of property, Minneapolis, Atlanta, over the course of Friday night, Saturday, we were here doing as much as we could to protect our resources and our capital. And we'll be doing that till things calm down rather than open up the opportunity on some fluke chance to get a brick through a windshield. We've requested, because we're, like a lot of agencies in the state of Maine, to some extent not prepared with equipment to handle things if they get out of hand. Now the federal government just this afternoon has offered to supply us with some protective equipment that we've requested just a minimal amount to staff, maybe half a dozen people, because staff has been asking. But we're comfortable with where we're at now because our primary role in assisting Lewiston and Auburn with the rallies that have not only already happened, but the ones planned in the future, and who knows how long this will continue, will be to handle their calls for emergency service while they're dealing and assisting protesters, whether it be on the march or just at a site. So there's that. Other than that, about the recent retirement, we have a couple of deputies. We're timing, but you can't control medical issues. So we're short-staffed as it is on that end. But it just seems like this year, since probably the end of January, we've had these ongoing issues, if not for the virus or issues in society. The jail head counts down to 90. We have the problem, I believe, still trying to resolve it with the state of Maine, where out of the 90, 19 are sentenced, 11 are sentenced to MDOC, but they're still not refusing inmates. We have jail, patrol, civil, all divisions and communications. We really never did anything about reallocating staff and protecting resources in case the virus hit us. Everybody's now back, so that's good. A lot of staff were happy to resume their regular schedules anyway. And we're working with the district attorney's office. He and I communicate frequently about bringing the jail back to the normal flow, for lack of a better term, in stages. For instance, we've gone through protocols that the DA established with new arrests coming in to try to find alternatives where he makes the decision. We've taken a step where we're allowing warrants to come in, avoiding that process. We'll take another step probably regarding felony arrests. It's giving us a chance to not only go back to business as normal, and that sounds bad, but there's really no good way to say it. But also, we still need to be mindful of the coronavirus and keeping our head count down without the assistance from the state taking their sentenced inmates. It's one obstacle. What we're doing is warrants are coming in. Let's see how that affects the overall head count. If it causes too much of a peak, we'll delay the next stage without calling them for assistance, looking for alternatives. But I got to say that the biggest help is the area departments. I mean, I appreciate the district attorney's office. They're really going out of their way. But as far as, the community engagements and things that are going on with the departments on their own looking for alternatives before they come to our door, and then having to go through the agonizing step of calling the DA to find out if there's still an alternative. They've really worked, for the most part. There's been some confusion like there is with anything like that, well with us and helping us to bring our head count down from where it was 160 to now 90. And of the 90, or I think it was 89, 11 don't even belong to us. So that says something about how the coordinated effort in this community is really worked well. But it could have been very hard if we didn't have cooperation from the arresting agencies, and if we didn't have, like I said, give credit where credit's due. I'm the first one to call the district attorney's office out. He really worked with us well, ensuring that the head count would go down. And now where we're going back, because you can't do this forever, we're making sure and doing it in stages that the head count just doesn't go back right up to 120. Still at 90 it gives us better opportunity than obviously 120, but we have limited quarantine availability. We've avoided the virus To this point, lower would help, but where this week has been kind of 85 to 90, I mean, for the past week, that seems to be our number, so let's see if that number stabilizes as far as the headcount goes. Other than that, I don't know if you have any questions about the goings on that we've had to participate in or things we've done. Again, a lot of our role in having meetings with Lewis and Auburn in regard to the protests or the rallies has been to support them or supply resources to them, whether it's calling extra deputies so they could assist the citizenry with their right to protest and do it in a safe way, whether it's escorting them through the towns. So we haven't been on the front line of that, and for the most part, I think you've seen, or haven't seen any issues reported, and you might have seen on social media pages that they went relatively smooth. So it's good that a coordinated effort, it gives the people their opportunity to protest in a safe manner. And hopefully that continues for the next one scheduled tomorrow night.
Thank you, Sheriff Sims. Any questions for the sheriff? I just wanted to say that I wouldn't wish the extra burden of the unusual times that we're in to be put on anybody, but if it's got to be put on somebody, I'm glad it's you, meaning that I trust and appreciate your ability to balance things and just make them all work out. I think you do a very, very good all-around job, and you think with both sides of your brain, and you're just an unusual asset. So,
Well, I think
I'm glad we have you here.
it's the background coming from a French family where you have 5 conversations going on at the same time and can pick up on them all.
That'll do it.
I think I actually function better that way. I get a little tired, but it works for me. But thanks.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Absolutely, thank you, Sheriff.
Appreciate it.
you. What from the administrator?
So you just very quickly, courthouse is now open, serving the public. Staff is working on budgets. The draft audit is being finalized. It again is coming slower than our expectations, but we expect to have it shortly. I reviewed the purchasing and procurement and the sub-award policies that are before you tonight. And I will simply say that these are required for grant applications, of which we just made one, and acceptance, and they're standardized templates that are used throughout the country. We didn't invent these on a midnight, a week ago. And while we believed we had these policies, but turns out we don't find them, and thus you need to approve them to be in compliance for this grant application. So we're currently doing. We, along with several other counties, were notified of several employees who had signed up for unemployment, me being one of those employees. And I'm still looking for the check. The employees were still working and had not filed for unemployment, and thus this was dealt with using the fraud notification to the state and other steps as outlined for us to take. So that's been dealt with to this point. Met with individual department heads regarding various issues, and we will be continuing on as we get back to normal. I hope it's the old normal or not the new normal.
The new old normal. Questions for the administrator?
Mr. Post, what is the grant that you're applying for, and on that, are you aware or monitoring any available money from the federal government that has been proposed or allocated for counties?
The one that we recently submitted is for, it is from the feds. It's from, I want to say it's from, it's not FEMA. It's from Justice, the Office of Justice. It's the sheriff's department. And it's $58,000, and it's going to be, I think it's for 3 towns, Mechanic Falls, I can't remember all the towns, but they'll get a portion of it.
And I just went over with Angela an hour or so ago, another grant that's being proposed that the committee, Androscoggin committee is just getting ready to send to the state for various and sundry items that are needed, from radios to a trailer, an EMA trailer to various other things and so on, so that would be forthcoming.
So you can tell a lot from an administrative report, but also a lot from what doesn't get reported. So I assume that your bragging rights to any fishing is at a low ebb for this week.
It was at a low ebb, yes, yes.
Great, and
The chair informed me that he heard that up where I was, that they were catching big tuna.
that's right.
And I almost caught one, but it got away, so.
That's the way it goes. So the court's open and the rest of the building, what's his ambition on that? Are all the offices open?
Yes.
Okay, we're all, great, gotcha.
The district attorney's office, which, because they're a hybrid with part state and part county, they're going to be fully back in the office next week. Or I think it's next week, or the week after. They're still working all of their kinks out and trying to get the state and county things squared away, but there's a plan, so.
Great. Next would be comments from the public. Any public that would like to comment today? Hearing none, we move on to new business purchasing and procurement policy. Commissioner Chris, maybe on top of that,
I'd make a motion that we accept it and, yes, I definitely.
I'll second it.
moving seconded to accept the purchasing and procurement policy. Any discussion?
I'll second that, Chair.
Yep, moving seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I would request that we table this. This is a pretty substantive document, and I think it would be prudent for us to look through it more at this point.
Mr. Chair, here we go again, which is one of the reasons why we've been hesitant to bring policies in front of you. But this particular policy, again, we need it for the grant application we just submitted. We've said that we had it, actually thought we did, we don't find it. And so I am not quite ready to pull the grant application that we just submitted because we don't have the policy that in place. So I would ask that we approve the policy, and then at some point in time down the road, if you want to make a tentative change or whatever, then that's the time.
Chair, just to remind us that, I think it was about a year ago, we had this policy on the agenda and talked about it. I believe it's the same policy that was brought up before, is that right? Yeah, well, we did talk about it as well. I was chair, so I remember it pretty vividly, and it, conversation ended in about the same way. We tabled it, but as I will say, we've had it for about a year. So I think we should continue on discussing it, at least before we, make any decisions to table it or to change it or anything.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Larry?
a question then, in regards to that, was it in regards to the jail camera contract discussion and the complaint that we received from one of the bidders? Because I'm just not recalling just document to my knowledge, and if we were told that we didn't need it because we already had a policy, I'm confused. I'm just trying to understand which is the case.
Chair, if I may.
We yield to the Commissioner Fedor.
This policy was, I'm not sure if it was before or after that discussion, but this was on the agenda at some point in the past year, and it ended up getting tabled, and we didn't bring it back up again. So I would encourage us to talk about it. I know I looked at it a year ago, and I looked at it recently, and it seems pretty straightforward. I have a couple questions. Like, one of the things is, I'm curious, maybe I looked at you briefly, but one of the things I'm wondering is if local businesses are scored a little bit higher for being local versus out of state. Case in point, when we talked about Machias Savings Bank versus Anderson Savings Bank with a marginally different interest rate, that was something that kind of came up. That probably wasn't first on our mind when we were talking about it. So that's just one of my things that I wanted to talk about in respect to this policy is weighing local companies a little bit more favorably. Of course, all the other considerations are important.
Right.
So with that being said, I'd be curious as to hear our staff's perspective on how that fits into this and maybe if there's a little part of it that references that.
I'm not sure that it, as far as local, if it's actually says it in here. This is actually a template that's used for actual other counties and nonprofits. And what it does is it incorporates all the main statutes that we're responsible for, and all the OMB, which is the Office of Management and Budget in the federal level, the requirements for them for federal grants, and it's incorporated it all in together. So because it's a federal level, I'm not sure that it probably doesn't state the local specifically.
I think our treasurer has not been reactionary from the time she's come on. She's been putting these kind of documents in front of us, working with the administrator, trying to get our policies updated or in order or in place. And the policies she's brought to us have not been reactionary. They've been because she recognized, and between her and the administrator, that we needed policies. As soon as we got this midday Friday, and I looked it over, I called you. I thought it was just very comprehensive and very well done, and every step of the way is backed up with statutes. I think it's excellent work.
The only other, I would suggest, I don't know if we're gonna adopt it today or if this is something to bring up later, but weighing local businesses or services is something that I would like to see incorporated into this if possible. I'm not seeing, I don't think that is I wouldn't rate that super high on the rubric in terms of, skewing it so that we choose a local one against all other qualities of that this lays out in terms of the bid. But the one other thought about this policy that I had is in when I worked in, I wish Commissioner Roy was here to talk about this point as well, but one of the things that I see in my work with municipalities is that they are really determined in the RFP process to get multiple quotes, when sometimes they have a service provider, because they feel like they're obligated to. So sometimes they have a service provider that they work with that they have a good relationship with and provides probably a competitive value for their service, but they feel compelled to ask for or put out an RFP. And sometimes I find that ends up that the municipality pays more because they put it out to an RFP instead of valuing the relationship that they have with the provider or vendor or whatever. So I do see that there are some outs, like if possible and things like that, but I think maybe there's words in here that we kind of allow that to happen, but I think that's something that I would like to see more honed in on a little bit. I do see that often with things, especially with construction, that RFPs and competitive bidding is important with it. But even in our work, what we found in the time that we've been here for the past, say, 2 years, that we don't always get multiple bids. And I know it says if possible,
Right.
but sometimes you only get, one bid. It is maybe from the provider that you worked with in the past. So those are the only two things that I see in here that, from my experience, that I think could lend itself to the policy. And I don't know what, I could try to work it into it, but I don't know, exactly what that would say. But clearly, those are things that should be weighed against the rubric, but maybe not necessarily weighted really heavy. I guess my only other suggestion would be, talks about it will maintain records sufficient to detail the history of procurement, including. I don't think it's a place for this in this policy, but I would encourage our administration to have a really good example that maybe they could provide to the staff or people, to follow for that. And I don't know if you
For an RFP, you mean? Is that what you mean?
Well, no, the record sufficient to detail the history of procurement section. Kind of like the order also that is referenced in here. So to set up, a standard as to
Mhm.
what they're striving for.
Sure.
Because I think so that, might, and examples are good, just what.
Sure.
Commissioner, do you see a value in passing this and then coming back with some amendments to the policy, which you can do at any time, in order to not hold up the grant?
Let me ask you this, would it be acceptable to you to just add a 13 on the evaluation of alternative vendors?
Yeah, I could see that there. You mean specific to the local one?
Local.
Okay, yeah, I think that makes
Because
sense.
there it's talking about other areas where we are, weighing the, as opposed to, treasury, do you see any place that fit in better?
No, that works.
They also call out positive efforts shall be made by the county of Maine struggling to utilize small businesses, minority-owned firms, women business enterprises, labor surplus area firms whenever possible, and then they list out steps on how to go about it. So there is a conscious effort to use local businesses, and I'm comfortable with it.
I am.
If you want to add something to clarify a little bit more, I'm fine with that.
Maybe in that paragraph, just add the word local.
Maybe add the word local to the
To
paragraph.
the paragraph you just read. Although I think you're right, I think
To
I think
utilize
the
local small
spirit of-
businesses,
I
minority-owned
think the
firms.
spirit of local is in that paragraph, I
Yeah.
agree with that.
I took it as a local thing. I mean,
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Just to, spell it out and ensure that it's in there.
Yeah, I like that idea of just adding local in there. I think that's fine.
To the existing paragraph.
Yeah, as for my other statement about, not going to an RFP with an established relationship, I think that's something that I'm not comfortable with coming up with what it should say on the spot. So I'm fine with maybe trying to bring that back up as an amendment or working with the staff to see about changing that. So I'm fine with passing it now, and maybe revisiting that statement about it later.
Is there an amendment to add a word local to the existing paragraph? Or
Sure, yeah, so I'll make an amendment as long as the administrator and finance director are okay with adding them in there. So which paragraph was that, Commissioner Ames?
First one, right under affirmative consideration of minority small businesses.
Just under evaluation of all alternative vendors. Below that.
All right, so in the statement, I'd like to make a motion to make a minor insertion into the policy that it's in the section of affirmative consideration of minority, local, small business, women-owned businesses, and labor surplus area firms. And have that reflected in the sentence below that essentially says it again. I think that it would be sufficient.
I need a second?
Yeah.
A second.
Moved and seconded to add that language. Any objections to adding that language to the existing document we're considering?
Mr. Chair, I move the table, given that if this was discussed last year about this time, there was ample time to add it back to the agenda for, let's see, another 6 months, which it was not. And I think this needs more time to be read through. It's not an attraction from anybody, but I think this would be appropriate to review. So I make a motion to take.
Table needs a second. That's okay, where we are. Hearing no second, the motion to table dies. So we'll proceed with the vote on the amendment. This is any more discussion. All those in favor of the amendment, signify by raising your hand, saying aye. All those opposed? Motion carries 5-1. The motion before us then is passage of the policy itself. Any further discussion on that?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Larry.
I respectfully make a motion to, due to my sincerely held religious beliefs, to remove sexual orientation out of the non-discrimination policy. And out of fairness to all people, we should not be giving special preference to any group, whether it's a majority or a minority. And I make a motion to remove that. It's throughout this document. It's page 2, but there's references. I don't think it's fair if there's a single dad or a single mom that if they ran a business, they don't have equal standing to be hired for this, using this policy. I think it would be much more appropriate to keep that as neutral as possible.
I'll second that, at least for the purpose of discussion. How does that play out? We're not discriminated against. Okay, so we're not discriminated against. Paragraph I'm looking at, I don't see any conflict in that. And it is the government discriminating or not discriminating. That's a distinct issue from, say, the icon issue of a bakery that doesn't want to make certain kind of cake or something. That's a private enterprise. Can anyone see a particular area where that would be an actual discrimination to someone by leaving that information in?
Chair, I'm not sure about an answer to the question about, just kind of clarify, I don't see in this that we're going to be taking any affirmative action. You know, we're not, you know, we don't, it kind of goes into my next question as well, that I was looking for a little kind of explanation from the staff about is, you know, I see the weighing of all of these criteria, but what I don't see, you kind of point to this question, is in a rubric that weighs orientation or whatever higher than that. You know, the qualities that this seems to lay out are cost, which is what is essentially said first, quality of the service and that sort of thing. So, you know, I don't really see that orientation is weighed any more than the others. It's just a consideration. I don't really see that coming up and being a point of contention that we wouldn't be following that, because it's really about the quality of the service. I think it's just more just saying we won't not choose somebody because of that reason, is more my interpretation of what it is.
Thank you, Commissioner, that's why I asked that question.
And I think the bottom line comes, if you're spending federal dollars, you pretty much have to follow those rules.
That too. Further discussion? Commissioner?
So I take it, you just clarify weighing the criteria is really up to the department head and the administrator. There's no, you're not planning on making a rubric with a scoring or something. It's more like a case in point, thinking about it kind of thing instead of some, right?
Yes.
Is there a rubric?
Yeah, no, we're not gonna have a big 10-sheet scoring system, but
Mr. Chair, I just would point out on, so many pages on this, there's no page numbers, but I think the 4th or 5th page does say affirmative consideration. So that is, I just think we should be on a fair playing field. I mean, no malice or harbor any discontent to anyone. I just feel that that should not be part of it, and that it should be basically straight up consideration of the merits. And I disagree that we wouldn't have some sort of a criteria that's, I think you kind of need some sort of a matrix based upon the evaluation, such as the evaluation of alternative vendors. Alternative vendors should be evaluated on a scale that considers the following criteria, and it goes 1 through 12. I just think there's a lot to this.
Can the Commissioner cite the area of the policy that you were?
There, sorry.
I got it, he's looking at it.
Found it.
Where is it?
Sorry,
Okay, so
5, I believe.
Or under what paragraph?
evaluation of alternative vendors.
What's the paragraph?
It's the 4th page. You'll see a whole bullet list of 1 through 8.
Okay. Evaluation of alternative vendors, is that it?
In the list. He's referencing there should be some sort of matrix for it to actually weigh everything.
I don't see where,
If we're stating that alternative vendors shall be evaluated on, it's under bold, underlined evaluation of alternative vendors. Commissioner Kelly, did that help?
yeah, I'm not seeing that specific reference.
No, he's referring to the 12 points.
I know that, but I don't see anything about sexual orientation here.
May I ask
That's
the treasurer
fine.
question while you're looking for that? Is this part that we're discussing, is this out of uniform guidance?
It is.
That's what I thought. So, I mean,
So it's settled, so to speak.
Can we even change that?
Well.
If you're
with-
spending federal dollars, federal and state dollars, no, it has
Not
to.
that it cost.
Thank
All right, some of the stuff I wouldn't have written the way it is.
we wouldn't have either.
Yeah.
That's the way it comes.
The overall context of trying to get through the day and keep government functioning. I'm
And
gonna vote against the
And the
motion.
actual regs in federal language, if you like.
I think Commissioner Christie might say. I'm gonna vote against the motion, but I appreciate the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We're ready for a vote? All those,
Sorry, there's a vote to, that is amendment.
okay, but actually we're voting on the amendment, which I seconded, but we'll be voting on whether or not to remove the sexual orientation references from the policy. Further discussion?
And the minority references, Mr. Chair, as well.
And minority references. All those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed? Motion fails 1, 2, 5. The motion before us is now the main motion to pass the policy. Any further discussion? Hearing none? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries 5-1. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like the minutes to reflect that my no vote is with no ill will toward anyone or any group. But out of my biblical beliefs that we should not be treating any person in a special manner, but all the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I would like the minutes to reflect that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Continuing on the new business sub-award policy.
Same deal with this one, we need it for any federal grants, and it's basically just saying that if we do a sub-grant, that we're gonna monitor it and treat it with the same federal rules as a regular federal grant. We don't typically do sub-grants, but they require us to have a policy anyways.
Chair, I would like to make a motion to approve the sub-award policy.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Approve the sub-award policy. Any discussion on that? Commissioner?
Mr. Poster, or anyone else, in our past with the RFPs, have we specified contractors subbing out any part of it in the past? Is that something that we have, talked about with them or specified with our RFPs?
Generally not, although I'm thinking that there may have been a couple that we asked them to list their subcontractors and so on as part of their deal.
So just, on that, I wonder if when we're kind of looking at this, and clearly not all the RFP characteristics or, characteristics are in there, but maybe one of these covers it, but maybe one of the numbers should be about subcontractors or sub-awards for the RFP that they should, and if they're looking to bid on it, that they should specify if they are going to be using subcontractors or awards. I don't know, it seems like that would make sense to me. I don't know if that would be part of it anyways, but do you think that would be included otherwise in someone's response to an RFP, whether they be doing that? Or am I kind of going off course with this?
I think you're going off course. The sub-award is, for example, if we apply on behalf of a particular town for a grant, that town would be the sub-award from our grant, as opposed to a contracting.
So that would not, that would not be included in this then, so what you're saying, it's really more going oriented.
Yes.
I see,
Yeah.
okay.
It's just that it says our relationship to the town of wherever, if as a pass-through grant to them.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Moved and seconded to accept the sub-award policy. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion items, receiving discussion items. Commissioner?
I just noted that our administrator included a couple of news articles in our packet. I wondered if he would comment on that in his perspective.
Okay, and just primarily for your information, the one I remember, you'll have to jog my memory back on. But the one about Kennebec County's budget being up 8.8%. So when I come in with a 7.5% budget, you think I'm doing great. That's just for your information, just to see what others around us are having to go through. And while we don't have our budget ready yet, I think they're on a fiscal year, July, June budget. But that was just for your edification, that's all.
How is our budget looking with everything going on?
Right now, for this year, we're gonna be okay. looking at next year and some of the things that we have to do. We're gonna try to hold the line as much as we can.
Further discussion items?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Commissioner?
Sheriff, I appreciate you sending the memorandum of understanding. Can you embellish on that a bit, or?
I can tell you what it's about, I don't know what polish.
I'm sorry.
No, I mean-
Just if,
Without trying to confuse the issue, you're all aware, and back in the beginning, I thought I had included you guys in the email that I sent to the town managers. So once we finally had the agreement, I thought it was important to send it to everybody that it is, you know, that I said, hey, I'll get back to you when this is done. In the end, the goal was not for us, because it really leaves us in a bind. They wanted out of the call sharing agreements. They offered some things, and it wasn't favorable. While we worked with supervisory staff knew about it. And the description I gave, us meeting with them and kind of playing the word game. And I'm not saying that begrudgingly, but it was an exercise in futility, I guess you could say. We were going through these motions just to appease to somebody on a, you know, a level with the state, when we knew the end game was it was going to be done, unless we agreed to something totally ridiculous. For instance, this is not an exact example of what was offered, but we'll continue a call sharing agreement, not reality, but this as an example to help you out, because I'd rather not say what the offer was. But while you were asking, the state says we will patrol Wales all the time and leads, and you patrol everything else. And, you know, we were doing school drills at the time to show you how far back the conversations go. And it was kind of like a heckle. I mean, we had there's nothing we can hold over them or do. And it wasn't like that, but the leverage was the boss, the colonel, and the Department of Public Safety, and I'm sure the government, they're getting out of call sharing. And so they offer this, and, you know, as we're doing school drills, well, you are the chief law enforcement in the county, and it's up to you to provide the law enforcement services. So when that kind of got thrown out there and I saw where this was going, I said, it is, and that's why I wouldn't want to not provide services to two communities that are contributing to my budget.
Yeah.
And, you know, so it sounds
agree with
bad,
what you're saying.
and it was very amicable with us, and I don't begrudge Colonel Cody, you know, or Mike Soschak, or it leaves us in a bind. They were doing this regardless. So they said, hey, you know, everybody thinks we're just going to leave. We're just going to leave. But if you think we're not, we'll be here. And like the agreement says, we'll respond to our calls. And if you call for assistance, and we're available, we'll back you up. And if we're in an area we hear a call come in, we'll let you know and we'll take it. Which that's already happened, a car deer accident where our guy wasn't in a position, he had another one going through. So those things happen now. I forgot where I am because it catch me off guard here.
Sorry.
No, so when we were going through this, they basically said, we'll still be here. And we brought to their attention, well, if you're still gonna be here, and this actually happened with our supervisors meeting with their supervisors at the same time, because you want the staff to know you're trying to do what's in their best interest. I mean, you know what my staffing levels are, you know how big the county is, and you're pretty much saying double up with what you've got now. And the people, thankfully, that we have employed here take pride in doing their jobs, being thorough and doing them well, being responsive. Those things all potentially are going to be affected. They're concerned about that, rightfully so. So you ask the question, well, if you're still going to be here, why are you doing away with the agreement? If you're still going to have, and currently, I mean, it was pointed out to me by the former troop commander that had retired, and, you know, when I first met with him about concerns with the call sharing agreement, and at the time there was a lot of sheriffs saying we're done with these. I said, well, we can't survive without one as it is right now. You know, we just didn't have the manpower. I said, but these are things I observed in my experience as a patrolman. You know, there, huge delays, and it was pointed out to me, quite frankly, which I always appreciate, you know, the candor. The agreement says we'll respond to calls that we're responsible for. So, if we're patrolling Turner, we get a call for Turner, it is our responsibility, we'll go. That doesn't mean that we'll have a trooper in the area. He might be coming from Oxford, he might be coming from Freiburg, might be coming from Portland, but we'll answer our calls as the agreement calls for. Again, play on words, because I would have assumed you'd have people in the patrol area. So when you're looking at the call sharing agreement and the hardships it creates at state, understanding what they're saying, same level of staffing, the priority with the interstate because of drug trafficking and other things, and how they patrol a section of Oxford County, although they had no call sharing agreement there, and how they patrol an area in Cumberland County and no call sharing agreement there. The only one they had one with is us. And it created a hardship when they've got this section of the state and then we've got the Androscoggin River and they're supposed to be on this half. And I point out, yeah, but that's closer to the interstate. And there was just, and that's what I mean, conversation of futility. So we exercised everything. So basically in the end, hey, we've got a new agreement. So when we see the agreement, I said to Lieutenant Tilsley, I was like, all this saying is that what you told us verbally, your verbal commitment, hey, we'll still be there to answer their calls. And he says, yeah, pretty much, which is okay, because it actually says, all right, you said you'd be here and here's the document, but if in the event you're not, or more often, you're not, at least there's something to say, but you agreed to be in the area. It is what it is, and it's no discredit towards them and their agency. I understand what they're looking at and trying to accomplish. It's going to set us back a little bit. Beyond that, did you read it?
I wasn't able to get through all of it. I did print it out. But I got it yesterday. I'm not complaining. I appreciate sharing with us, and I will state that you did brief us on this, or not brief us might not be the right
we knew it was
word,
coming. It was
you
inevitable.
did let us know. You discussed this, and I appreciate that very much. I'm just trying to kind of mull through it and understand. My apologies. I did not get through the whole.
No, that's okay.
I was trying to go through some other documents, but it is important, and I was just trying to understand kind of where we're at. And then
that kicks in July 1st.
Yeah, I did see that part, but
the other issue that came to mind is we did a brief outlook with communications into call volumes, and we looked at ours, and ironically, the state did look at theirs. Kennebec County did a similar, and there's days where they have troop inspections, things of that nature, where we cover their calls anyway. And out of it, it showed that when people have a law enforcement request, it's consistently showing that they're currently calling the sheriff anyway, with the sheriff's office. We found that, they found that. When you look at non-emergency calls for service, or even to some extent calls for service, we were getting 1,100 to their 300 or something like that a year. So it was funny when you kind of, and those aren't exact numbers, that's ballpark. Kennebec actually had it figured out to the call. We did, we're getting 80% of the calls for service anyway. So there probably is something to them saying, we'll answer the calls we have, but they're fewer than the calls we have. Of course, the 911, that changes everything because we're transferring through. And I will say my experience as a patrolman and the time I spend at dispatch, there is a lot of people that will call and say, who's patrolling green this month? And depending on who is patrolling it, we might get a call back the following month, or they might be okay, and that's no discredit to one way or the other. It's just people shop for any kind of service. So
what I guess I'm having a hard time understanding is, I remember as you talked to us before that there are a lot more specialty units than there were 20 years ago, or when I think this agreement kind of first started, or however. I guess what I'm still trying to understand though is, I still see, state troopers out and about, on the interstate or on, are they, I guess, obviously right now they're quite busy, unfortunately, with some of the unrest, and I hope that quiets down for everybody's sake. Obviously, I am very concerned about what happened to that George Floyd. That should never happen. And that person who did that will be prosecuted, and hopefully the fullest extent of the law, and his cohorts with him. But that's not your typical police officers either, or sheriffs. I guess I'm sort of wondering now,
if the state, I realize they still have the crime lab or, you know, special, but what the heck are they doing on a normal day? If they
Well,
have this, I realize they've lost people, but I still have a hard time.
No,
believing
let me
vaccine-
give you a quick, let's just say Troop B, which is the troop in this area.
Yeah.
And I don't know the facts, but I'm gonna give you a brief of what I kind of picked up on. So let's just say they have 20 troopers assigned to Troop B, and that's parts of Cumberland, Oxford, Androscoggin, and 295. And out of the 20, every single one of them is responding to some sort of specialty unit, whether it's a detective, so a homicide, if one occurs, they might get called out. They'll lose that guy. If it's firearms qualifications, they're a firearms instructor, they're at the academy or wherever. So they're taken out of the rotation. Accident reconstruction, a member of the TAC team, called out. I think he said of his members of his troop, he only had one trooper at this point in his career, and I'm assuming he was a younger or not a veteran, that wasn't a member of a specialty unit.
Okay.
So they, at some point in time, they're all called out, and sometimes they're out majority of the time, like let's say a homicide detective. The other issue they have is they have 325 troopers across the state, but they've had 325 troopers for 5 years, 10 years, maybe 20 years. I don't know. I'm just helping you to understand. In that time, they've created specialty units for the casino, for cold case, for computer stuff, and those positions were filled from the troops. So if you have 8 people out of the 325 that used to be a member of the troop, now they're assigned specifically to casino. So their overall system lost that. But it was also explained, and I think Colonel Cody was quoted as saying, even if we get the new troopers we're asking for, I don't remember how many positions they were asking to fill, they still wanted to do away with the call share agreements. Because these teams that we all use as resources, and they're very valuable, we've used their TAC teams a number of times throughout my career and used them for other assistance, you know, with some of their other units, or anytime there's a murder, they're consumed. The units have taken away from their top end, and they've never been replaced. So when they get the replacement staff, their intention isn't to go back to call sharing agreement. It's to be able to function and do their specialties as well. So I don't know if their intent is to get back to their highway patrol and really improve on their specialties, but also answer calls. It's just that they're having a hard time with the call sharing agreements in place, even though at that point they were minimal because people have different experience with the call sharing agreements. And there was a push probably 2012, 13, 14, where sheriffs were doing away with them and adding staff. That didn't happen here, and that was what brought about the first meeting I had as a newly elected sheriff. Do you intend to do away with the call sharing agreement? I didn't think it would have served our agency well or the communities well because we had nowhere near the amount of resources. We're better positioned now, but ideally we're going to end up needing staff, which was why we brought up the Cops Fast Grant. Thankfully, we have a contract with Poland. They are still looking at bringing it to the voters to increase it to 24-hour service. I didn't really want to mention in the email I sent to all of you in the towns about that and try to bring it up. I thought about it. Hey, do I put the idea in some communities' heads? But I said, that's not the issue here, and I'm not out there, trolling for dollars or selling contracts.
I appreciate that.
I think there's a few communities that are, one community probably should have one of some sort, and another has kicked the tires. But when they brought starting that process up to their voters at a minimal amount a year or two ago, it was voted down, and I can respect that. But you have to staff for the calls. You have to provide for officer safety. We'll see how it goes. The guys know it's going to be a rough summer. The state police has signed agreements. They will still be able to answer our calls for assistance. They also, we're 24-hour patrol. Their schedule isn't like that. So we'll see how it goes. Maybe it improves things. I hope they are in the area, and I hope what they told us verbally and committed to in writing goes okay. I suggested on our last meeting that we meet 90 days out because communication has been so good, and we aired out a lot of things that we can evaluate is everybody playing nice in the sandbox? What can we improve on? Are things going well? Are people blowing calls off to the other agency? You know, you never know what can happen out of something like that. So it'll give us a chance to evaluate. We'll probably bring the supervisors in like we did the last time, pick a neutral location, you know. I mean, we actually did that last time because it was a fire department that was big enough to hold us all. But that way we can hear the simplest to the greatest concerns, because the goal is to improve it, and we all have limited resources and we want to use them efficiently. So the communication is good right now. We have good working relationships with them, and you know, you almost got to be careful what you say here, because I wouldn't want something to come out and make it look like, do I like it? No. Is it an offer to salvage some sort of resource, as well as, you know, what they provide for us that we don't have to do independently? Yes. I'm just cautiously optimistic that, you know, they'll get some calls so we don't get them all. You know what I mean?
I appreciate that. Thank you for kind of explaining it a little more. I appreciate it. And just, if you feel so inclined to tell your staff, I want to tell them thank you for all the work they're doing. I don't know what it's like to be an officer. I've never been there. I hear some, you know, rumors of, you know, getting treated very unkindly. And so,
2-3 weeks ago, you're walking into places and people are thanking you for your service, and it feels really awkward. And today, it's a different vibe, and that doesn't feel so well either.
and I'm fully of the opinion that the vast majority, overwhelming majority, does not harbor those attitudes.
No, you know, nobody hates bad cops more than good cops. And, you know, I'm sorry the minority in this time is taking over maybe the reflection of the majority. I think we all can improve in our daily lives with everything we do, regardless of the situation. These things happen repeatedly, you know. I'm not talking about this instance. I'm talking about things in society come up that tend to cast a shadow. It bothers me because I've worked really hard in my career, and a lot of the people have that work for this agency are just in the field, and to have an act as serious as that did occur happen, but you know, cast us all in a negative light. You know, we'll recover. I think in this area in Maine, we're very fortunate because the training is much more superior than it is in other places. The things we do as far as training, and I think some of the things I've been involved with locally, especially as an administrator, communicating with groups outside of law enforcement and within the community. I know Lewiston is constantly doing it, and Auburn's constantly doing it. We all have the opportunities to do it. I think when situations like that come up, our local perception is a little different than probably the nationwide perception. But I think all the agencies locally, you know, in part with the training we have and the experiences we have and seeing the errors that have gone on, you know, throughout our careers, have worked to maintain those lines of communication and those connections, and expand the resources like we did with, say, Bates College. That opens up opportunities, and when times like this come in, it makes the recovery from something like this, the transition to move on and improve things, a little smoother. So I know we are here in Maine. It's easy to say, you know, Deerville, we lead and things like that, but I really think there are some things that fortunately we set the mark on, and you know, I'm happy to be a part of it. And thanks, I'll, you know, let staff know.
If you wish.
Question for sure. Any update on the hiring process for the state covers 75% of it?
Oh, you mean the grant?
Yeah.
We are,
Sorry.
during the coronavirus, what's funny is we're still getting reminders that the application process is still open, but during the coronavirus, when that was the big thing, we quickly realized that the first thing to go is federal grants. The irony is knowing that, and you're getting these reminders about deadlines and grants still available. We felt that due to the situation, due to our population, due to the, you know, the support of the board, we had letters of support we submitted as well. We probably should act a little faster to get more towns to do that, but I actually don't think a lot of towns pay attention to it like you do because you're directly involved. Our feeling is that that funding will be gone, but we haven't heard that, you know, but you just look at typically things like that tend to not be available due to the situations the coronavirus, you know, may have caused. You know, so we'll see.
Hopefully that works out.
Well, and hopefully it does, because it's a good way to softly add to staff from a financial perspective and see if that's the appropriate number, not putting them on a ship, but creating a different ship during peak times. And see, can that help us to absorb, because those things are easy to identify. And maybe it works where, we've delayed costs for a little while, or maybe it gives towns a chance to consider doing what Poland does with the contracting for service on some basis, whether it's, Monday through Friday, or whether it's 7 days a week, or, whether it's 24-hour coverage. Anything would obviously assist greatly with the absorbing of that, so.
Thank you. Any further discussion on it? Now we'll move on to item 10, future agenda items. Any future agenda items? Hearing none, we can entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to go into executive session pursuant to Title 1 MRSA, Section 405(6), subsection C.
Would you second it, go into executive session?
There will be no action taken after the executive session, no action requested.
All in favor? Opposed? We are going into executive session.
Excuse me, we're live.
We're live. We are live. We are live.
We're live.
Make a motion to
We're on.
adjourn?
Second?
Move the second to adjourn. All in favor? Well, thank you.